Now, if you've been following the news recently, you might remember this from Sajid Javid just yesterday.
The UK Health Security Agency estimates that the current number of daily infections are around 200,000.
200,000 daily infections. It's a really striking number. We had it on the news last night. So did lots of the newspapers, actually. Have a look at this. Front page of the Times, you can see there it is, right at the front, 200,000 daily Omicron infections. Same thing if you looked at the front of The Guardian. So this really was big news. Even actually the FT had it on their front page. Very serious newspaper. 200,000 Omicron infections daily. It begs a question, doesn't it? Where is this number actually coming from? Is it new intelligence, privileged information that the UKHSA, the Health Security Agency, has, or is it something else? Well, 24 hours on, I think I've worked it out. It is actually a back of an envelope sum. That 200,000 comes from something I'm going to show you right now, which any of us could really have worked out. And it begins with this, OK? I'm going to show you exactly how they did it. This is case numbers. So that's just your number, the one we see every day of daily cases. That's a 7-day average. And what you'll probably remember is there's a difference between cases, positive tests coming back positive, and infections. Infections is a kind of modelled number where you're working out how many people across the population have COVID at any given time. And in this case, this is new infections each day. And what you can see, and what will be pretty obvious to you, is that there's a difference. See that blue line, the cases on the 21st of November, it was about 35,000. On the same day, infections about 78,000. So that is always higher because you've got people who aren't getting tested, basically. And so what the UKHSA did is they took that 78,000 number and they could have presumed, and this is fine, that it was the same in early December as it was in late November, because we don't have that data yet, 78,000. Then they went to the fact that we know that at that time, broadly, about 20% of the sequence cases were coming back as Omicron. So they assumed at that point, 20%, just over 20%, that worked out as that dot over there. You can just about see it, the red dot. 23,000 Omicron infections on the 7th of December. So the 7th of December last week. But how do you get from that 23,000 to that scary 200,000 number? Well, let me show you. So we'll take, there's that same dot. And what we're going to do is just double it. We're doubling it every 2 days, actually just under every 2 days, every 1.9 days, and you get that line. Doubling every 1.9 days, you get that exponential increase. You can see the curve. You'll be familiar with it from all of the COVID period when you've been looking at those charts. And if you follow that line, lo and behold, on the 13th of December, 207,000 Omicron infections, new infections on that day. So it is right, according to this, but it is a back of an envelope sum. But it is at that kind of level. By the way, that's England. It's not the UK as a whole. 200,000 for England. If you're talking about the UK as a whole, you're probably up to about 250,000, maybe even more. But what happens next? If you follow that line, if you follow that logic, then right now, we've got 300,000. So today, 1 day on, 300,000. And by the end of the week, by Saturday, you're talking about an extra 1.3 million on Saturday, new daily cases on Saturday. Now, already 200,000 is the highest we have ever seen, if indeed it is true. 1.3 million would be just crazy numbers. And by Christmas Day, 25th of December, we can't even fit it in here because it's so high up there. It's kind of well above the roof of the studio. You're talking about 17 million Omicron infections on that day. And just bear in mind, that's on that day. If you were to work out all of the kind of cumulative infections you've had over this period, well, everyone in England would have it. 55 million people in England would have it. Just on the basis, on the logic of this line that the Health Secretary was basing that 200,000 figure on. It doesn't mean it's invalid. You know, that there is definitely cause and use for these things when we don't have the data to back it up. But nonetheless, it's worth just being clear where that number actually came from. It's also worth being clear, if you take a different assumption about how fast you're doubling those case numbers, or those infection numbers rather, you get very different results. So just recently, just last week, the UKHSA was talking about maybe cases doubling or infections doubling about 2.5 days. So that's at a slower rate. And 2.5 days gives you this line, still very fast increase, but nowhere near looking like that red line. So by yesterday, the day that Sajid Javid was talking about 200,000, actually it would be 120,000 Omicron cases. Not quite a record, but certainly high levels. And by Christmas, well, 3.4 million on the day, which is certainly very high indeed, certainly seems implausible, but nowhere near 17 million, nowhere near everyone in England. having had Omicron. But, you know, laughing at this, and to some extent it is a reductio ad absurdum, is to undermine the fact that really there is a serious point here, which is that cases are going up. They are unlikely to go up half as fast as that, or certainly they're unlikely to continue going up as fast as that. In South Africa, we know that they did go up at that rate for a while, and then they started to slow. So then it was kind of, right now, as far as I can tell, it's doubling maybe every 10 days. But when you look at the actual data about what's happening, certainly the figures are rising. Not quite as fast as that, but certainly rising. These dots here just showing you those case numbers across the UK, so actual cases that we're detecting. And the latest figure, 59,610 new cases, close to a daily record. And if you just look at the kind of 7-day average, well, look at that black line. It is going up. And I think pretty soon, maybe by the end of the week, certainly by next week, we're likely to see a record number of cases. But here's the thing, as we should know this already, but it's worth just underlining it. It's not really all about that line. It's about this line as well. This is admissions to hospitals. And what you can probably make out is those two lines very correlated in those early parts of the pandemic. You can see at the start there, we didn't have much testing, but admissions were high. But look at that second wave. You can see those lines really correlated with each other. And look at what's happened since. Kind of as a result, in part of the vaccination programme, you can see admissions very low while cases are high. And so the real thing we're going to have to focus on is not just that black line, or indeed the line that the Health Secretary was talking about infections, but also what's going on with admissions, what's going on in healthcare. And if there's one part of the country right now which it is worth focusing on especially, it's London, because you've got a really high increase in London. Just look at that line for cases, the black line for cases in London at the moment, nearly vertical, going up very fast. There is a lot of Omicron in London. That seems to be the epicentre, but still admissions is going to be the big question. So keeping an eye on that red line and working out whether it's going to go up, that is the thing that we're going to have to be doing over the course of the next few weeks.